Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Energy RX. I'm Christine Paschal, your host, and today I am so honored to welcome Ditte Young, a world-renowned animal communicator, telepath, and therapist whose groundbreaking work spans species, dimensions, and human experience. With her gift of telepathic communication, Ditte has helped thousands connect more deeply not only with their animals over decades, but also with nonverbal individuals, including people with autism. Her work reveals that language is far more than words. It's energy, intention, and deep presence. Through her intuitive communication, she gives voice to those who often go unheard, bringing understanding, empathy, and connection where it's most needed. Ditte has worked with animals for numerous television shows, showcasing the incredible depth of communication possible between human and animals when we truly know how to listen. She's partnered with veterinarian hospitals and helped Olympic equestrian teams. She now offers comprehensive training programs in both animal and human telepathy, empowering others to awaken their own intuitive abilities and communicate beyond the realm of traditional speech. She was recently featured on the Telepathy Tapes and continues to inspire a global audience through her teachings, her presence, and I would say mostly through her unwavering belief that true communication comes from the heart. Ditte, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my God, what an introduction. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are welcome. I am a huge fan of the telepathy tapes. So I'm going to start out by saying to my audience, I have recommended listening to the telepathy tapes. I think they're revolutionary. I think this is just the beginning of true global change in our awareness of what's possible in communication. And when I heard Ditte, I immediately reached out because she's definitely at the forefront of bringing in this new, I would say, wave of consciousness. You're definitely, I think, a global consciousness leader. So I am so excited
Wow.
to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you've been doing this work for decades. So you know that this work is possible. And we'll probably do a very high level background of Ditte for those of you who didn't listen to the telepathy tapes. Now, since the telepathy tapes, she's gone stratospheric. She has been on so many podcasts. I mean, we're really lucky to get her here today. So she's told her story countless times. So for those of you who haven't listened, we'll give a high level, but hopefully be able to dive into some areas that have gone a little bit unexplored with some of her other podcasts today. So, Ditte, some people who didn't listen, some of my listeners have not yet listened to the telepathy tapes. So maybe if you could just give us what you feel called to share about your background and how you came into doing what you do.
Oh, I don't think I can do it short.
Well, do it however you feel called to do. So kind of how we got here today.
Right. I've always been intuitive. I've always been a very sensitive child, and I always felt the animals communicated, like literally spoke sentences in my head. And I think a lot of children experience that. And then the adults will tell them, no, it's just your imagination, or no, it can't be right. Telepathy is not a thing. And it weren't a thing back in the 80s where I grew up, the 70s and the 80s where I grew up. And later on, I went to this school, and people might think school is that a Harry Potter school, but in Europe we have very high standards for
Yeah.
um, the result of what we bring to other people. And to me, it was very important to figure out how can I shut this down and or off, because this is way too overwhelming for me. And when my teacher told me I was once to become a animal communicator, I was intrigued. I was afraid, and it didn't make sense to me at all because I was not a rider. I don't have a horse. I didn't have any animals. I was brought up with animals, but I didn't have animals. And yet I was curious. And I trained and trained and trained with human beings and animals, all sorts of animals. And I saw how easy it was to practice telepathy. And then I knew this must be a life mission because I have to share this with people. And I had no idea that the skepticism would be that massive. I had no idea that the world weren't ready for something that was so logical for me. And now, almost 30 years later, I understand that the timing is now. The paradigm shift is now, and people are ready to figure out what all this consciousness is about. Yeah. So that's, in short, my
Yeah,
journey to
in short, with the animal piece of it is how that came about. I think that also that teacher told you that you were going to have a special child, correct?
yes, yeah. She told me
Yes.
I would give birth to a son, a very special, gifted son, and eventually I would facilitate clinics, shows, speeches about my son. And I was only 19 back then. I weren't even prepared mentally for motherhood. It didn't have my interest back then. Of course, I knew eventually I would like to have a child, but I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. And then
Right.
10 years later, I gave birth to Philip, a neurodivergent son who's was born blind, has a minor brain damage, and is autistic. And I had no idea that it was, amongst others, TEDx, where I would be that privileged to create a speech about my son and his abilities.
Now, when Philip was born, when you have your infant, you can't tell if there's something that is different about them when you have particularly your first baby. But in listening to some of your other podcasts, you knew there was something that was different. You tried to get help from the beginning. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And no one believed me. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of parents out there who have some sort of intuition, and when they get a warning sign, they contact the doctors or the hospitals or the nurses. And when you are not believed in, it's very frustrating. And I have learned throughout the many years with Philip and my job, to always listen to my intuition.
Yeah, that can be such a challenging thing because is there's this line between, oh, am I just worrying and excessive and making things up? Or is this actually my intuition? Do you have any thoughts about when someone else who isn't as gifted as you are right now and trained, how to discern between, am I fixated on something and just worrying, or is this truly like an intuitive knowing?
That's a good question. Usually, in general, usually when people have anxiety or are worried
Mhm.
about things, they often visualize an idea or a thought, and the outcome is negative, and they can literally see details, or it's kind of like a storyline. When I'm going into this train, it will probably crash, and then there will be 300 people dying
Yeah.
underground. So it's kind of like a story. But when it's your intuition, it's not a story, it's a short snippet. It's a very, very fast moment of an image or an emotion, and then it's gone. And that's intuition. That's the difference.
That is really great. So if you're getting caught up in long stories and making a lot of things up, that very well could be your mind creating false future scenarios.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a fast burst sort of awareness or knowing when it's your true intuition.
I think if you have listeners out there, intuitive people, or who have a sixth sense, they probably already experienced that when they got a warning sign, it took about 3 seconds and they had to trust it. It was a fast image or a fast event or
Yeah.
fast picture of something. And they went for it and figured out, oh my God, it was a precognitive
Yeah.
um, message I got here, but it wasn't an entire story from A to Z.
Yeah. Okay. So this goes right into when we talk about our senses and awarenesses. You talk about to do telepathy. What sense do you consider telepathy about the five senses that we all know about?
I think telepathy is the seventh sense.
Okay.
When you activate all five senses, you are more aware, and there's more room and resources for your sixth sense. And your sixth sense is when you sense that people are looking at you without being able to look at them.
Right.
A-list Hollywood stars sense there's a photographer out there, and
Mhm.
we see pictures of them looking directly into the camera lens, even though they never saw the photographer. That's the sixth sense.
Yeah.
And when we have that straight, we open our seventh sense, where it's a possibility to transfer informations back and forth, and that is called telepathy.
Okay. So working on the sixth sense, would you also say the sixth sense would include something like, I know, like someone pops into your mind and they text you or they call you. Would that be sort of in the realm of sixth sense, or would that be seventh? Would that be more telepathy?
That would be more telepathy. The sixth sense is more um, mediumship, clairvoyant skills. You sense a presence, but you can't see it. It's not an information that is transferred in your mind. It's more like a presence. I sense there's somebody here, or I sense bad energy in the room, even though no one is opening their mouth, or I sense
Hmm.
a ghost. I don't call them ghosts. It's deceased souls in a room,
Right.
but I can't see them clearly. That's the sixth sense. And the seventh is
Okay.
transmitting things,
Tele-
such
Okay.
as a
So,
telephone call.
so then the clairs, like clairsentience, clairvoyance, all of those things are in the sixth. Telepathy is the next level of seventh. Okay, that makes it really understandable for me. Okay, that's really great. Now I'm going to come back to Philip a little bit because I think this is so interesting. If you haven't heard this, you were working with a horse, and we were talking about Philip. And so, how did you actually find out that you were pregnant with Philip?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. I was hired many, many years ago, because Philip is 16, so it must be 17 years ago. I was hired by a horse owner, and he wanted to know if a mare was pregnant with a stallion or a mare. And because in the equine industry, stallions are worth a lot of money, of course, he was hoping for it to be a stallion. And
Okay.
I was just there unfiltered, as I always am, and honest. And I told him, luckily for him, well, your mare says it's a stallion. And then the mare said, and you have one too. You're pregnant with a stallion too, Ditte. And I never planned on becoming pregnant back then. And I didn't believe it. And I ran home and took a pregnancy test. And I was pregnant with Philip. So it was a horse who informed.
It was a horse. It was a stallion.
Yeah.
She told you. So this just makes me think of how this intelligence of animals, that not only she was able to communicate to you that she was pregnant with a stallion, she knew she was having a male, that you were pregnant, she could sense that within you, and that you were pregnant with the stallion. So it I'm so fascinated, and I think we're on the tip of the iceberg of understanding this intelligence of animals. Do you have you had any other stories where you have worked with an animal, or even something surprising, even a wild animal that they've explained something to you that you were really surprised about, that you wouldn't like, I'm surprised I didn't know I was pregnant. Have you heard other things from animals that were unusual like that?
I hear them every day. I just helped. I just helped two different dog owners, one from the U.S. before this podcast show, and one from Abu Dhabi, uh,
Okay.
in the Emirates, and and both the dogs told a story about the family members and what they knew about the family members, and the family members weren't present at the session with me. Um,
Okay.
and to see that shocked reaction with the pet parent I'm sitting with, like, what, how do they know this? um, that's a joy for me in my work.
Yeah.
And I know it's no longer shocking for me because I see it every day. But
Yeah.
to the pet parents or the pet owners out there, they have absolutely no idea of how clever these animals are. They have information of each and single one of us. And to my students, when I teach animal communication, I always tell them to be a very clear channel and just to expose themselves for the informations that will run through them. But the bonus track on being an animal communicator is the fact that the animals will always bring a message or pass on a message that you, as an animal communicator, can find useful in your everyday life. That's the bonus of working with these animals. They are very, very clever. We see dogs trained to pick up scents of drugs at the airport,
Right.
and we train them to pick up on COVID or cancer. And of course, when we do that, because then cancer cells have a smell or a scent, right? Or
Hmm.
COVID smelled like one at
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Which means every single emotion or cell we have, the animals pick up on, and that's a new thing.
Oh, that's really interesting that perhaps an emotion could have a smell that they detect.
Yeah, I think a vibration and a smell.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't heard that. That's fascinating. Um, what about the difference? I thought this was really interesting. So you work clearly very regularly with people and their pets. So probably mostly cats and dogs. You may have had some. I'd love to hear if there are any stories from if someone said, "Hey, can you talk to my, my lizard or my fish or anything like that?" What the difference may be. But also, I know you've had a little bit of experience with wild animals. So, how you sort of perceive that maybe the personality type. I know you have personality profiles for cats and dogs, and you may want to talk about that a little bit or sign up if you want to understand how to do this work and how her system of these personality profiles and how to talk to them. You can learn from Dita. So the difference between maybe cats and dogs and
Horse.
lizards, horses, yeah, or and truly wild animals.
Uh, the biggest difference between a cat and a dog and a horse is their awareness of the collective. It's very generalized, but the cats are very focused on themselves. Pet me, feed me, play with me, and that's basically it. And if you can't meet me in my needs, I'm going to take off. And then we have runaway cats.
Yeah,
The dogs are aware of the family members, and most dog owners know that the dogs rest 100% when everyone is home.
yeah,
They're always aware of what are you doing, brother? Where is my sister going? What about the mom? When is my dad coming home? Which makes it more I don't know if I could say interesting, but if you understand, as a therapist here as well, uh, having multiple needs we have to understand and meet is very interesting for me,
mhm,
a therapeutical animal communicator. And for the sake of the horses, those are the only animals we are sitting on. And when we sit on the horses, they adapt and they take in our physical issues and our mental issues, which is very interesting when I work with the elite, those riders who are riding in the Olympics and have to be synchronized in the program. It's very interesting to figure out, is it the horse who's afraid of the audience, or is it the rider who's afraid and nervous? That's pretty interesting as well. And the difference between wildlife animals and the domesticated animals are the wild animals are more interested in their pack, which means when I met the lions or the elephants in their natural surroundings, or the dolphins or the whales, they spoke about their friends. Whereas when I communicate with a dog that has already been domesticated, they talk about the family members, of course, because they create a new pack, and their pack is the family.
Right. Yeah. When you communicated with the whales and the dolphins, you got the sense that they were talking to you about their friends.
Yes, and not only their friends. I remember one of the times I was at the Maldives, very beautiful place here on planet Earth, and there will probably be the first islands that's going to be flooded eventually over time. And when I was sitting on a boat and I asked literally to the sea, because there are so many whales and dolphins all over, and I couldn't pick one because they were moving and swimming, and the boat was in movement. And I just said, okay, everyone here, friends, I'm sorry, we are interrupting your sea. Is it okay with you? And the mutual calling back to me was, it's okay because it's not our sea, it's our common place to be, us as animals and you as a human being. So, in other words, it's your sea as well. And that was pretty shocking because that was a more collective understanding of what it is to be together, more as a dog that is interested in my own activity, my own training, and my own family members. This was a
Mhm.
way more, a wider focus than I have ever experienced.
Wow. So they really considered us even as part of their collective in a way that, like, this is yours too. So they included us in their collective.
Yeah, they saw us as oneness. And I remember in my early stages of this animal communication, I heard people saying stuff like they have a spirit soul, a mutual spirit soul. On the other
Mhm.
side. And I was pretty curious to figure out, is this true? Do they have an individual world where we only have animal spirits and we are that divided? We only have a humane spirit when we pass away. And I don't hold the truth here, but in my
Yeah.
experiences, I see all the time when I'm on the other side. On the other side is called heaven,
Mhm.
or the universe. We are together over there as well.
I think that's going to make so many people so happy because our pets are so beloved to us. And so when we lose them, which we sadly do, it's the agony and the ecstasy of pet ownership that we will see them again. We will feel their spirit. We will reunite with them in some way. So with that, do you talk to pets on the other side?
All the time. I Telepathy works on all frequencies, and
Mhm.
um, I believe in reincarnation. I believe in the universe. I am very spiritual, and yet
Mhm.
it's important for me to prove um, the effort of my work. And I can prove it through behavioral issues or better life or health issues that is found from a
Yeah.
veterinarian. But I've seen over and over again, it's just as easy communicating with deceased animals as it is with those alive, because telepathy is telepathy.
Yeah, you're communicating with the soul, right? So you're
It's
if you're doing telepathy, you're in Copenhagen, correct?
Yeah.
And you could be communicating with someone in Abu Dhabi, not with their pet, and you're getting the same information. So for me, it's a of course, but it's, I think, hard for many people to wrap their head around. Well, how do you connect with the soul of a dog somewhere else? Because I think it's your intention is so important, and you're really coming from this heart space of really, I want to deeply connect with my being to your being. And so you're connecting just in different angles, maybe.
Exactly, and energy will always find its way, regardless if it's cross countries, cross time zones. It will find its way. You can send me healing, even though I'm in Copenhagen, Denmark. I'll
Yeah.
receive it immediately when you are focused on me, and that's the only thing it requires, something to focus on. And when I have clients booking me, I always ask for a picture because then I have a focus point and I know where to send what kind of direction I have to send my thoughts.
Yeah. So do you feel like pets, and I think I know the answer, but for other people, after our pets have crossed over, that their soul will stay with the human for a while. That as a spirit, the animal comes back and sort of brings comfort in some level. Do you find that?
Yeah, they usually stay with their pet parents for a couple of months. Some of them, it's pretty rare, but some of them stay with their pet families for years because losing them is so devastating for them, for the human beings.
Yeah.
So that the animals know, I have to be there. I have to send my energy there. I have to bring them comfort, as I did when I was alive as well. And often in those situations, it's a matter of helping the human being to let go and send the animals to the other side, because there is entire world over there. And to the people who listen to the telepathy tapes, if they heard about the hill, we have dimensions around us. And even though it's difficult to believe, they are pretty busy over there as well. They have
Yeah.
a life over there. And when I contact them, deceased animals or deceased human beings, I often interrupt them in things. But it's okay with them because they are at
Yeah.
our services. Of course,
Yeah.
it's
With
like
love.
having a huge or a massive glass wall between us, and finally a medium, a clairvoyant, an animal communicator open a window or a door, and it's a possibility to speak openly between those walls. That's our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's wonderful. Okay, there was a kind of a story that made me giggle when I was listening to one of your podcasts, and it was about a woman who you had done a reading for, and her dog had crossed over, and she believed that the dog was with her, but she wanted some clarification around that. And she had smelled some really funny smells, and you picked up on that. Do you know the story that I'm talking about?
Actually, right now I can't remember it, but it's because it just came from the Abu Dhabi dog. But please,
Yeah, yeah, so this dog apparently, like, she would smell like the dog was passing gas, and, like, there were these, like, funny smells that she would kept on smelling, and you said to her, she didn't tell you that, but she would be alone in a room and smell something like dog smells, and know what she smelled because, like, her dog used to do that. And you brought forward this message like, yes, he's there with you, and he brings forward these smells for you. And she just, like, she fell over. She couldn't believe it that her dog, that was one of the ways through these scents, maybe not pleasant, but she got her attention. um, and so she was so surprised that was one of the pieces of evidence that you gave to her, as that, yes, your dog is still with you.
that's true. Yeah. And I think that people, pet lovers out there, they recognize this if they have said goodbye to their animals. Either they saw them, they smelled them, they sensed them, they felt them. I think they know.
Yeah. So I hope this can give some, as I know, I quite honestly, I have several friends who have very recently lost dogs. And if you're listening, I hope this gives you a little bit of comfort that your pets are still with you and they will love you and be waiting for you. I want to go back to the horse piece because you were mentioning that with the Olympic riders, that you have to work with people on their emotions because the horse will pick that up. I have seen, and I think this is fascinating, that people working with horses can have incredible healing. I have someone pretty close to me who, when they were younger, had some issues that were hard to work with in therapy. And, parents really trying to find a way to support and help. And the traditional route for her of therapy wasn't useful. And she became very interested in horses. And so they would do anything. So they got her a horse and did all of the horse training and the dressage and all of the things. And that was revolutionary for her. Like, that was what actually, I think, brought her into balance. And she's thriving and doing wonderful. Do you see, like, why is it that horses seem to have this ability to be so healing for many people?
And what a wonderful story, by the way. And I think that's exactly the reason why horse therapy is getting more and more popular in the world in
Yeah.
general. Horses mirrors the pack, and in the minute we remove them from the pack, the field, the boxes, the paddocks, they connect 100% with the human being. And yes, I have made these personality profiles, which means you're welcome to go check them out on my webpage. But depending on what kind of personality profile you have in the horse, they will take different roles, which means a sensitive horse will reflect a sensitive rider and be more cautious and calm and silent around that particular girl, whereas a prince or a princess, the personality profile as a prince or a princess, would push the rider a little bit more, trying to make them more courageous or uh, be more in tune with their self-esteem, even though it could flip over to low self-esteem, but they would be the development change they needed. And I've heard stories like you just told me about over and over and over again,
Yeah.
because I think most sensitive, emotional human beings on this planet are think it's easier to be around animals than human beings.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because the animals are loyal, they don't judge, they don't have a bad day, they never hold grudges against us. It's only human beings who do that against one another. But the animals are just present, they're in the now, they're just thankful animals to be around, thankful souls to be around, because they're just happy to see you every single day. They're just, yay, there's my mom or my friend or my sister or
Yeah.
my soulmate. And that has the impact of us as human beings, that we take down our guards, we take down our defense mechanisms. And that makes it more pure. It's a more pure connection.
It is a pure. We have this dog that my husband didn't want. We got him at COVID and we bullied him into getting this dog. And we brought him home. And my husband really tried to, like, it wasn't mean, but he tried to sort of ignore him, a little bit. It's like, fine, that's your dog. I said, no, I didn't want him. And within days, I mean, the presence of this beautiful little being just broke him down. Now, of course, those two are so bonded. My husband has literally said, I don't want to be here without Louis. And it is such a love affair. They go everywhere together. If we go out to eat, it's like, do they have a patio? Can we bring Louis? Like, he wants to be with this dog all the time, because I think these animals are just such, like, these beings of just such pure love. Some animals are mistreated, but I just think animals are these magical beings, in my opinion.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I have often debated when people talk about they're not intelligent. You can't personalize animals. It's scary. You are trying to create them into a human being. And I'm like, yes, because they are intelligent, because they do have emotions, because they do have a temper of their own, a thought on their own. And if, in case we should measure, sorry, if we should measure intelligence, I think because when we measure human beings' intelligence, it's based on chemistry or math or calculations, right? And
Right.
if we measured intelligence, emotional intelligence, as how aware are we on each other and how much do we sense on each other, and how loyal are we to one another, the animals would win that contest and we would lose.
Absolutely. They don't manipulate. I told you the story in the beginning and I wasn't sure if I was going to share it, but I'm going to, because we're talking about intelligence. And I think we don't understand how animals may have this, like, incredible intelligence that we don't have. Now, I can't prove this story, but this happened to me many years ago. I only told this story to Eliza, who comes on my podcast quite a bit, last week, and I had never really spoken of this. It was really a hard thing that happened for my family. But about 12 years ago, we were driving in a minivan. My three kids were very young at the time, and we were driving in southern Utah on kind of a 2-lane freeway and through a sort of a mountain pass. And I looked to my right, and there was sort of a canyon that went down, and there was this big, beautiful dog. He kind of looked like a giant husky wolf, like this gorgeous, majestic being, with his man owner, and he was off leash. And I noticed it, and all of a sudden, this dog literally like started racing towards the car. Of course, we're horrified. My husband's trying, like, doesn't want to crash the car with our kids in it, trying to veer over to the left. But I could feel this dog's energy. And what I felt from this dog is, I'm trying to throw myself in front of your car. That's what I like heard. And that's what I felt. And I was confused. I'm like, what is, like, why is this dog doing this? And so sadly, my husband wasn't able to. I mean, this dog was racing towards us. We were not able to miss him. Was horrified. We pull over, but again, we're on this very narrow freeway, and we have little kids in the car. We're like, what do we do? Do we want to go back and help this man? And like so awful. But there's cars, and we were not in a safe spot. And my husband said, I'm so sorry, but I don't want to get hit. Like we have to go. And so it was terrible. Everyone's crying. We drive, and about an hour and a half later, we get to a city and we start getting into traffic. And up ahead of us, I see that there was this horrific car crash. And there was something in my soul that felt like this animal, I can't prove this, but something deep in my soul. I felt like on some field, this animal had this awareness of something happening. Maybe the man did too on some level, that he let his dog off the leash. I don't know. But I felt like the dog somehow sacrificed himself to save us from this horrific crash. So went home with the kids, and we lit candles and said, prayers for the dog and for the man. But I always have, and so again, like, thank you to this animal and this man. I always felt that there was some way this animal tuned into some field of intelligence and did sacrifice itself for us somehow. So I do feel like there's so much we don't understand about their intelligence, and also like their love for humanity, because they've put up with a lot from us, quite honestly.
Yes, they do.
They do. Um, I know, I'm surprised I actually told that story.
Yeah, that
Do
was
you believe?
courageous of you. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how my husband will feel about that, but do you feel like animals have soul missions?
Oh, yeah, they do. They have a mission of their own, as you and I have a life mission, so do they. And they have a mission for the collective, and the collective would be their pack, right? The family members. Often, when something occurs in life, that could be our successes, that could be behavioral issues, or a situation that worries us or creates anxiety, it's only a trigger to something that is already present in our lives or in our system.
Mhm.
But
Right.
because it's our animals, it's more not exaggerated, but it's more overwhelming in us. Just as if something happened to your child or one of your children, it would be way
Right.
more important to you, maybe, rather than if it happened to yourself. And that's
Mm.
the amazing impact we have on one another. And I often see all the time animals are reflecting what is difficult for the pet parent or the pet owner, which means if they are not in tune with their own emotions, they get a sensitive animal. And then we have behavioral issues because it's difficult for the pet parent to understand the animal. And often, the loser in all of this, if we don't understand the animals, is the animal, because we'll sell them or find them a new home, or in some situations we put them down. But if we
Right.
listen to them instead, they are teachers. And every single time I see an animal owner who's afraid of their animals, it's an invitation to turn up for their own dominance and leadership. And when I say dominance and leadership, I don't mean by hitting them or being
Right.
abusive or violent at all. I mean energetically dominant and
Yeah.
leading. And as I just said, if it's a person who's not in tune with their emotions, instead of being provoked by having a sensitive, oversensitive dog who's afraid of vehicles, afraid of the keys, afraid of the next door neighbor, be invited to see, okay, if I'm more in tune with my sensitivity and my clear audience and being more aware of the now, look what will happen. The dog will become less sensitive, which means the dogs are here to create equality for us and balance for the things we aren't in tune with. And I don't think they are doing it on purpose. I think there's a bigger thing, and maybe it's called God, maybe it's called the universe, maybe
Mhm.
it's our consciousness that help us being attracted to those souls, two or four-legged, that are the important keys and triggers to our personal development.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's all of a sudden this made me think of like, how do you get paired up and lined up? So you ever pull oracle cards?
Mm.
You know, like you could be looking at 500 cards sitting somewhere. I use them a lot in my work at the end of a session with somebody, and it's always the exact perfect card. Well, how did that card out of the 500 you find this card that's exactly the message that you needed in that day? You know, having the universe align you with the perfect animal for you, like in that way, you just think of this divine orchestration
Mm.
that, yes, trusting that the animal that you're with is so divinely orchestrated, even though you can't rationally in your mind explain it. But there is this field of intelligence that's exactly magnetizing to you, to each other, the exact perfect being and soul to develop and grow, love, and learn from.
Exactly, exactly. I hear pet owners all the time asking me the same question: why am I attracting the sick animals? It costs me a lot of money. Why am I
Yeah.
the one who attracts all the rescue animals, the shock traumatized animals, etc., etc.? And I
Hmm.
always ask the animal owner, how balanced or in tune are you with your shocks and traumas, or how in tune are you with these topics? And in 99% of the time, it actually makes sense to them. Oh, I'm focused on sickness and diseases. Oh, I'm worried about my karma lesson, or my theme in life is losing, being afraid of losing people. Here we go. I have animals I'm putting down one after another. Why is it? Until you learn it, and then it will stop.
That is really interesting to see and to understand why you're attracting certain animals. Okay, I wasn't sure if we were going to go here either, but I'm going to do it. We're talking about how animals come in and they maybe mirror things for us and they teach us certain things. I asked this question. I am in Ditte's animal telepathy class. Highly recommend it. And if you want to learn how to work with animals, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. I mean, she's clearly very gifted and she was born this way, but I think she's the first person to tell you that anybody has this capability. And it's like a muscle that you use. The more you practice, the more you use it, the better and better you get. And I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding that, oh, you're born with it or you're not. And they don't realize that it's like learning to speak another language or learning to do a sport or learn like anything else. Telepathy, clairvoyance is something that you absolutely can work out with and develop and get stronger and stronger and stronger. So you can work with Ditte. I asked this question in her masterclass last week. And my question to her was, I have noticed that sometimes there will be an animal that maybe is a younger animal that's surprising that they got quite sick and eventually had to be put down, you know, or maybe older, but it's been a surprise that they've gotten so ill. And I've had this sort of intuitive sense that these animals are so loving and so selfless that they have somehow an ability to draw into themselves an illness um, from their humans that they love. And so I thought, am I making this up? So that was my question to Ditte. So Ditte, I'm going to let you answer that question the way you answered it for me.
It's a very vulnerable topic for
Yeah.
the animal owners, and it is important for me to let pet parents out there know that it's no one's fault when we talk about the outcome of why are we attracted by the animals or the human beings we get attracted by. It's not anybody's
Yeah.
fault. It's a life
Yeah.
mission or a life purpose or a opportunity of growth. But I
Mhm.
often see animals taking in every single energy they pick up from the pet parents, especially the sensitive animals. And they
Yeah.
are not only picking up on when you, dog mom or cat mom or horse mom, when you're stressed, I become stressed. Most animal owners know this for a fact. Stress is the easiest way of seeing what you and I are talking about right now.
Yeah.
Stress is only one frequency. Stress is only one emotion out of many, many, many
Mhm.
emotions we have, which means if we know they pick up on stress, they pick up on joy as well. We know that. They pick up on sorrow, worry, anxiousness, fear, jealousy, etc., etc., etc. They pick up on all of it. And the deeper level is they also pick up on the diseases, which means they reflect it as well, maybe for the pet parent or the animal owner to see, oh my God, maybe it's me. But it takes a lot for the human being to actually admit, maybe it's me, because then we have, is it my fault? No, 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 it's not your fault. It's just the result of when you are connected with another person. When we know that when we have a group of friends, let's say young teenagers, they start to copy how they speak, how they dress, how they wear their makeup, their music, they copy one another. That's what we do when we connect.
Mhm.
The animals are doing exactly the same thing. Oh, you have a neurological disease? Oh, I will have a neurological disease because you and I are one. They are constantly searching for the oneness because they are primal animals. They are living in their instincts. If I don't have an animal owner or a leader, I'm going to die. In case a big lion is coming out of the bushes, I'm going to die if I'm all by myself.
Right.
So I better connect to my leader in a minute and be one, and then I feel safe. And I don't think that human beings think, or maybe are aware, maybe some of you are, of the importance of this very logical explanation I'm bringing here to you, because we are all searching for someone to be connected with. We
Yeah.
are all attracted by people we have something in common with, because then we feel safe. It's the
Right.
same thing with the animals.
Yeah. They really are such amazing beings. And I think we're beginning to understand. I love that there's people like you who are now able to bring a voice. And I think people may get a little bit frustrated. I think probably most people have tried talking or believe they can talk to their pets, and you probably, if you believe that, you probably can. Before I knew anything about you many years ago, I had a dog, and he was a rescue, always marking in the house. And I would sit and look into his eyes and try to talk to him. It makes me so sad when you do that. It really, I really don't like it. Please don't mark in the house. And I a little bit had. I mean, he's better, but he's never been perfect. And one of the things you said was it is harder when you're beginning animal telepathy to actually communicate with your own pet versus other pets. Because I think we have, like, I had an emotional response to what's happening with my pet. I feel emotional that he's marking in my house. So having that clear channel, I think, is more difficult. So can you talk a little bit about that for people who are pet owners who want to communicate with their pets? Would you encourage them to try talking to other people's pets, or what? How would they begin to develop this more?
The first thing is definitely to meditate, because we have to lower our brain waves and empty our brains to become a totally clear channel. To become an animal communicator on that, I'm sorry to say that, high level as I prefer working in,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to pass on to my students, it requires, you can't project at any moment at the client, the animal. And in case that you are trying to practice telepathy with your own animal, which you love, it's your most treasured thing ever, you will project in the beginning. Even though you might get an answer, the other part of the brain will instantly think, no, it can't be real, or no, I have tried that, or I have changed the food, or I have provided the chiropractor. And then we don't have silence in the brain, because then we cannot listen to the answers. And it's important to be trained enough to answer the right questions. And I'm allowing myself here to just give you a tip here, Christine. Another way
Mhm.
of getting the answer of why are you marking inside of the house, a different way of asking, or will you stop marking in the house, I'm getting upset or sad about it.
Yeah.
Another way of approaching it could have been, what's the reason for you to mark? How can I help you to prevent it? That would have been somewhat a different answer, wouldn't it? Instead of
Yeah.
nothing happens, because that was not the right question. But you have to be trained enough to go there. I highly recommend people to train on each other's animals, because it's more pure. And of course, people will think, "Oh my God, I have the biggest imagination ever. This can't be real." But then we can bring feedback to one another, and the pet parent could tell them, "It's true. Yes, that's correct. She hates her water bowl," or whatever it could be that we receive as telepaths. And it's a way more difficult to get bring feedback to yourself.
It is. Well, and I think that's why. So if you do Dita's group, she on Facebook has a Facebook group. And so you pair with people to practice on each other's pets because, like a muscle, you need to be able to practice
Yeah.
and get feedback because I think the feedback is so key. I think belief is so important that I'm not imagining it. I think a lot of us are getting those images or signals, about not just pets, but with our intuition and telepathy in other ways. But we think, I'm making that up. And so you just like delete, discard that. So actually practicing starts to build the confidence in your telepathic abilities.
And in a safe environment, because it's important for me when I do that Facebook group, and it's
Mhm.
a closed Facebook group, because you have to be a student, you have to know the methods. When
Yeah.
people ask, my students ask me, can I go and go out and do exercise or training with the neighbor's dog? I always ask them, but is it safe for you to do it? Because in the second your neighbor will say, "Oh, no, I don't recognize this," because they don't know how it works, you have to start all over again, because to begin with, it's a matter of building up trust in your own intuition.
Yeah.
Telepathy is the easiest part. It's trusting yourself that is
I
difficult.
agree with that. Well, in other areas too, because I don't know if you're familiar with the Arthur Finley College. I've done a lot of work with them. And it's, working with like doing mediumship. Again, it's that trust piece of being, and it requires bravery.
Yeah.
So being in a safe environment where someone knows how to be a good listener, because instead of immediately saying no, letting it unravel, letting the story be told, as opposed to someone shutting the door. Nope, I don't know that, because they don't know how to be a good receiver of it.
Right.
I had that experience, and I've told the story before. The first time I ever had a mediumship reading, it was this guy was incredible. This was in LA, 25 years ago. And he was in a room, and to this day, actually, he's the most incredible medium I've ever seen. His name is Brian Hurst, but he will not give readings anymore. He's like, I'm retired. I am done. And he was telling people the names of like these Philippine islands that he couldn't, I mean, like the information was so unbelievable. Like, and he didn't know any of us. This is pre-internet. He couldn't have looked anything up. And he came to me and to make a very long story short, he said, "You've recently read the book Pocahontas." And I said, "I don't have that book." And um, I was telling him no. And he said, "Yes, you have." And I said, "I have not read." I was determined. I knew I've never read Pocahontas. And I'm standing in front of this whole group. He's doing this reading because he went one by one. And he said, "Okay, we are going to stop and we're going to wait for you to remember reading Pocahontas." That's how confident he was in his abilities. Like, and all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my God." And I had totally forgotten that it was my friend coming forward, and she had passed away, and had been like 6 months before, but I had forgotten it. And she brought the book Pocahontas for me to read to her. And it was my friend coming forward, and I'm like, nope, nope. And by the way, I do energy work, even back then, but I didn't remember it. So it's very easy when someone's practicing mediumship to not remember certain things. It's probably the same thing with animal telepathy,
Oh, yeah.
that the owner may not remember something or be aware. So it's easy to get a no. So you probably want to be practicing this with someone in a safe space, so you're not just getting a ton of like no, no, no. You're getting an openness to letting the information come forward.
And practicing with another person who's not aware or focused on the past, the present, or the future, because telepathy has no timeline at all. And if you are unexperienced, it can be a bit confusing to figure out, what is this? So often the animal communicator will tell a story about, "Oh, I saw that you had a problem with the right hoof or something in the front leg."
Yeah.
And the owner would think, "Right now, no," and say no, instead of taking a pause, just a break, just for 10
Right.
minutes, and say, "Well, I come back to you." And that's why I love the group I have, because that's the possibility I'll give them. They can, be connected and tell them, "Oh, I literally forgot. That's true. 2 years ago,
Mhm.
we had a huge problem with the right front hoof."
Yeah. So with that, I want to, and want to ask you a little bit about, you understand medically what's happening with the animals a lot. I know you had an experience with the veterinarian hospital, and at the time, the public wasn't quite ready to receive it, and that was a challenge for you. I think this is interesting because you said when you were earlier in this work that you would maybe feel things more. I know I sometimes can feel an awareness in my body of something that's happening with someone I'm working with, but that it got too much for you. And so you learn to just see it in a way. Can you explain that a little bit when you're medically working, how that evolved for you?
To begin with, and it goes for my students as well, it's more convincing for the animals to transmit their health issues onto the physical human body.
Yeah.
It will be a very clear message, because when
Hmm.
you're suddenly experiencing getting a knee problem and you have absolutely no problem with your knee, it must be
Yeah.
transferred telepathically to you. But over time, after 100 and 1,000 of clients, where I
Yeah.
have taken in their health issues, I started to become very, very sick. And I had to tell the animals, "Leave it out of my physical body. I trust you when you just show it to me on a picture." And it works perfectly fine. But I'm allowing it with my students to begin with, to give them these aha moments, because I think they are very important when you are unexperienced.
I do too, because you can't deny it. Like, I'm feeling a pain in my knee. So for me, it's helpful. It doesn't bother me to have that sensation. It normally moves really fast. It doesn't stay. And, I'm not doing thousands of people. So at this, for me at this moment, I don't mind that.
Yeah.
And I know we're coming up on an hour and I've had you on here. I mean, I have a million questions more I could ask you. There was something that you said, and I thought this was really interesting, and I'd love for you to touch on this, that sometimes you'll be talking directly with the animal and there's a certain way they communicate to you, but sometimes you also have an intermediary, that sometimes maybe there's a spirit guide or an angel, and they will bring in more depth of information around the communication. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's I love that when I am a therapist, a clairvoyant, a medium, a healer, and an animal communicator, I can just take whatever tool I need during a session. And for me, it's not like switching on or off a button. It just comes through me. And I think most energy workers out there don't consider, am I a healer now? Am I an animal communicator now?
Right.
It's just energy going through us.
Mhm.
But in those cases where the animals are unaware of a a solution in the future, for example, I have to ask somewhere else. Or if
Okay.
they doubt, I don't know about this or this, A or B, I have to ask the guardian team or something wiser than the animals and the owners. And it's correct every single time. So yeah, it's very
So, so you think that animals have their own sort of spirit guides in a way, or are these just a team that you're working with?
It's my spiritual guides I ask,
Okay.
or the pet parents' guides. I've seen through many sessions that when I ask the animals, can I get in touch with your guardian team? No one appears. And it struck me and it hit me literally when I saw that. And it occurred, oh my goodness, if they don't have anyone to protect them and guide them, they are 1000% dependent on us as human beings, which means the responsibility should be even bigger for us to help them get a better life and guide them through lives instead of being annoyed, frustrated because we don't understand their needs or we don't, as human beings, understand what they were being bred for or their level of activity, et cetera, et cetera. And especially during COVID, a lot of families took in dogs because they wanted dogs to the families and to occupy their children with. And I knew back then in my country, we will replace 50% of these dogs when COVID is over, and we did. And I think it's horrific. I think it's such a shame that we had to get rid of dogs because they were no longer important for the family members because now they were too busy to go back to soccer games or swimming or ballet or whatever they had to go to. And I do understand the human needs, and it was a stressful life and every day. But if we understood the animals' needs, they connect with us. We would never give away our children. Why do we think it's okay to give away our animals? I don't get it. And I think with all this work, telepathy tapes, animal communication, the paradigm shift, I think people will take animals way more seriously in the future because we are very dependent on animals. We have to ask ourselves, why are we that attracted to animals? Why do we get that attracted by them all the time? Because we need someone to bring us down in the now. And that's what they do.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And that's why this work that you're doing, we didn't even touch on the human telepathy. Ditte does communicate with her son, who is now somewhat verbal, but was nonverbal. But I think that's a whole, that is in and of itself a whole podcast. If you are,
Too.
I'd love to have you on for number two, Ditte. You are such a wealth of information. But if you are a person listening who who's a caretaker or a parent or a family member or friend of someone who is nonverbal, Ditte we didn't touch on that, but she has a course for those individuals. I haven't taken that one myself. I'm sure it's as amazing as the animal one is as well. I do think this is such an exciting time. I agree with you. I mean, it breaks my heart for the animals. My algorithm is like filled with just animals on my social media, and I think that this awareness of that we are we are so much more than what we believe. We see these people, who go to the hill, and these abilities and capabilities that nonverbal people have, and how wise they are, the languages they speak, the abilities that, like, they are doing so much more than what we could possibly imagine. I think we're beginning, and Ditte is shining a light on that animals also are nonverbal, but are doing so much more, aware of so much more, have this soul, and that the way we treat animals and the way that we are great stewards for our human animals and animals in the wild. I hope that this is really the beginning of a new way of living with our animal friends. Ditte, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share or say?
I think the most important thing is just if you're interested in telepathy, throw yourself at it. Just, ask your animals back home for a yes or a no. Figure out a sign for a yes and sign for a no. That could be turn to the right for a yes and turn to the left for a no, or stomp your foot or blink the eye or something, and know that they will answer yes or no, but they will only do it once or twice. Then you have to stop, because they're not circus ponies, they're not trick animals. They have answered. And I think the second thing I would like to inform the listeners out there is definitely stay open-minded, because the more open you are, the easier it is to pick up the line when someone is calling you telepathically. If you're not open, then you will never listen when the phone rings. So I think that's the best tip I can bring to the listeners.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. Stay open. Keep your minds open. And also, I'm going to put on here too, because Ditte hasn't mentioned this yet, but she really talks about this a lot, is communication coming from the heart, and she works with the heart center a lot. So minds open, hearts open, where this true communication is happening. So Ditte, I will put your link in the show notes, but just so people listening, best way is for everybody to find you.
Google my name, ditteyoung.com, and you'll find two pages, ditteyoung.net, or ditteyoung.com. It's for human and animals. I'm on every single social platforms out there, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. So let's stay connected.
Stay connected. And for those listening and not watching, the Ditte is Ditte. Come into the show notes, Ditte Young, to find the links. But you can find her. She's everywhere. Ditte, I'm so happy to finally have gotten to have this conversation with you. And thank you for this beautiful revolutionary work that you're doing. You're really a brave soul. I know it hasn't been an easy journey. I know that you've had to work through a lot. We didn't get into any of the other challenges, but she's really a fierce soul, and she just keeps moving forward in her truth and her authenticity and her power. And no matter what the obstacles are, she just keeps walking forward. So Ditte, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.